What an incredible series we're doing with Dark Before Dawn, and what an incredible blessing this is to me, hopefully to you. Hopefully we are doing justice and honoring their stories, but I just wanted to stop and acknowledge that I'm very grateful to be able to learn about these journeys that they're sharing and the quality people that I've had on the show. So I want to just let you know today is exciting for me. I'm very privileged and honored to get to know this person. Real briefly, just got to know her actually, but I got to say this is our first music artist to have on, and her story is remarkable. And when you hear the maturity and just some of the strength within such a, you know, I don't want to say young person, but mid to late 20s, you're just going to be floored with some of her perspective. Her name is Brooke Robertson, and she has got a story about redemption and a story about forgiveness that you will not likely hear again quite to this magnitude, in my opinion. At such a young age, she was sexually abused, and we're going to get into that. And for years, kept it quiet, pushed it down within herself, did not share it for years, carried that with her. And I cannot even imagine the emotional struggles that came with. But what I see God doing in her life, and she would probably attest to this, is how he's utilizing her gifts in music and her lyrics and the storytelling that she has just been so proficient at to kind of shed light on some of her story, some of her tragedy, some of her dark. So as we do this series and continue on with Dark Before Dawn, I'm very honored to have her with us. She's an Burtonwood Records artist. Burtonwood Records is her label, and she has a debut album out now called "Taking My Voice Back." And the title cut of that album, "Taking My Voice Back," is obviously centered around her story and her healing of the wounds of sexual abuse from her childhood. So she's been able to work with very popular groups or artists from groups like Building 29, 429 and Seventh Day Slumber. She also has a song called Purpose for the Pain, which actually is about the health complications that her mom endured throughout the pregnancy of Brooke, having Brooke, and some of those lasting effects are still prevalent today in her. So, man, we're just so excited. Her music style just kind of encapsulates country, soul, gospel all together. I don't even know if that has a genre name, but she is just the entire package, and I cannot wait to dig in and hear more about her journey and her music. I want you to welcome Brooke Robertson to the show. So, hey, Brooke Robertson, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so last in line leadership here. You're a first time person here, and we might bring you back again down the road after you've got a couple like Grammys and you've gone platinum and done all this, whatever the terms are for music. But no, you having a good day so far?
I'm having a good day. I'm in Nashville. It is a little dreary, but it's fine. It's good. It's a little cool outside, cooler than back home in Louisiana. So I'm kind of soaking up the nice Christmas
Yeah.
feel like weather.
Yeah, we have sort of similar climates. You and I live in South Texas
Mm-hmm.
in the Houston area. And so I think it's like 85 today and on December 10th. So I don't know about White Christmas this year. I don't know if it's going to happen.
I don't think we ever had a white Christmas down south.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
that, that
Wow.
I know.
Yeah. The first year I lived in Louisiana, we moved in 04, 3 or 4. The first Christmas we were there, it snowed. It was
No way.
insane. It was insane. Like '03,
I don't
December
even
'03, I think.
remember that.
Yeah. So nuts. Well, thanks for coming on. I know you got a busy schedule and you're doing shows and you're speaking and you're doing all kinds of podcasts. And so I thank you for squeezing me in today. I kind of threw you a curveball. I appreciate it. But man, shout out to like the 3 of 7 guys, because that's where I heard your story for the first time. And so I wanted to reach out to you. And man, the audience is in for a treat today. So, you know, I guess before we jump in, so you're relatively not long in the tooth. See, that's the political correct term for people your age that don't like to be called young. People my age
Oh,
don't like to be
fair.
called old. So you're not particularly long in the tooth, let's say, but you've accomplished a lot. So like this music career's taken off, and how did you know like that was going to be your thing? Like everybody grows up wanting to be like on stage, right? Everybody, not maybe
Yeah.
not music, but you probably love to sing your whole life. But when did you like realize, okay, I've got potential here and it's my passion. It might be something I do for a living.
Yeah. Honestly, it's still something that God is constantly reminding me of, because I mean, everything that you do in life, you're going to have curveballs thrown at you. But to kind of give a backstory on it, I did not have singing on my radar when I was
Mm,
younger, and even like as a teenager. It never crossed my mind. I grew up a regular country kid. I rodeoed and rode horses and played basketball as an athlete. And I went to college like everyone did my age, and I was going for therapy. I was going for occupational therapy. I had no intentions on doing anything else. And I had the GPA, I had the job experience, and I had everything going for me to get in these schools. And I could not get in no matter what. I tried and I tried. I took this certain test and I paid over $1,000 because I've had to take it so many times. I am not good with tests. Okay. I am not. And I could not pass it. And so I was like, okay, at this turning point in my life where I'm like, okay, I have no plan B at all. No idea what I'm supposed to do with my life. And, I had sang at in the church band since I was 12, 11
okay.
or 12 years old. So I had been singing, but it was just a fun thing, or just a thing to do on Sundays or
Uh-huh.
Wednesday night youth. And so I got into my later teens, and I don't know what age I was, 19 or 20, maybe. But I don't know what age you are when you graduate college. Maybe I was 21 or 22. I don't know.
I think
Either
I
way.
was, we won't go into that. I was probably older than I should have been. No, I think it's mostly
Hey, age
22
is
when
just
people
a
graduate.
number.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, I was 21, 22 then. Whenever I had to kind of really figure things out, and I was putting out covers and stuff on YouTube and Facebook just for fun, still just for fun. And I had a producer. My producer now reached out, and he was just like, hey, you should come up to Nashville and write some songs. And I had never written in my life before. This is 2016.
Wow.
Never written before. And I was like, I thought it was a scam. Like, there is absolutely no way I'm going up to Nashville to write some songs and record. Like, to me, it just sounded way too big. I did not feel good enough for it. I was like, there's people who are way better than I am. There's no way. And
Mm-hmm.
so whenever I was getting denied to these schools for graduate school, I was like, talking with family, and I was like, you don't know until you step out and you find out. Like, this could be a complete flop, and I don't know until I just go for it. So let's just do it. Let's go for it. So I went up in 2017. I met my producer for the first time. We sat down and wrote some songs, about 4 songs for this EP that I released back in 2018. And about a year went by. We filmed a music video and all of
Mm.
that. And when 2018 rolled around, I got signed to a record label. And it just was like a snowball effect. So I got signed to a label, and then I went on my first nationwide tour in 2018 that fall. And
Wow.
yeah, and I can keep going, but that's kind of like how it all
Yeah.
started. And
Yeah.
it was not an overnight process, but also it felt like it happened really fast
Well,
too. So,
that's cool. No, I mean, I hope to get into some more of that in a little bit. Yeah, it sounds like God was closing doors on that other side where you thought your plan was going to be. And then he just kind of, whenever you're in the current of
mhm,
what he wants you to do, like in your lane, like things just kind of start to fall into place. It's kind of interesting. Not that you don't have some challenges, even though it's God's plan, but like you said,
yeah,
the doors just kind of started, the seas kind of parted and you started meeting people and just stuff started happening. But man, that's really cool. Writing music is cool. That's one thing I kind of do. I don't have any musical talent at all, but I write lyrics for our church a little bit just in the past I've done. And I love
mhm.
writing, but my son actually plays in his youth band guitar. And so I can live through him. And
That's where I
so we'll go
started.
that
Yeah.
route. Yeah. But man, I got to know. So we're going to unpack some of this. The series is called Dark Before Dawn for a reason. And I don't want to give spoiler alerts to the dawn because there's a bunch of that. So I want to set the stage for the audience a little bit. So you're in your, I don't know, young double digits, maybe. What were you, 9, 10, 11 when your world sort of came crashing down
Mhm. I was
in this
around 10.
situation that happened. 10. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, can you just talk? I don't have any scripted questions because there's no
Sure.
perfect way to go at this. I just
Yeah.
want to know, like, I know a little bit about your story. Tell us kind of briefly, just in general terms, what had happened, like, and then the process after as a young person because you held on to that secret for a while. So take us through some of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want me to be brief with it? Because it's kind of hard to be
No,
brief.
well, not Bree. I want you to be
Okay.
comfortable with however
Okay. So
much
I'm
you
going to
want to
dive on
share.
in. We'll
Totally.
dive in. Okay.
Totally.
So to kind of give a backstory on all of this, in when I was on that tour in 2018, I had this pressure after a tour to write a record. And I had never written a full record before. And so I was praying for direction as an artist because at that moment, even though I was like at this amazing place as an artist, I got to travel the nation. How cool is that? I got to sing my own songs to people that I never met and to meet new people. And that was really cool. But also, I just felt this insecurity in me, and I did not feel like I was good enough for where I was. And I'm like, God, why do you have me here? Like, there's people who can sing better than I can, people
Mm-hmm.
who can write better songs than me. And I just felt God say, like, Brooke, it's not how capable you are, but it's how willing you are. And to me, it meant that I was going to have to get out of my comfort zone. And I didn't even know what that looked like. So I was just praying for direction as an artist. I'm like, God, what do people need to hear? And what are songs that are going to reach people on a deeper level? And I still had no idea the depth of that prayer until weeks after that. And this story that I'm going to share with you, it surfaced. And years before, it was something that I could bury deep down pretty easy. I'd bury it deep down and move on with my life. Well, this time it wasn't leaving me. And I don't know about you, John, but if it's God, it doesn't leave you
Yeah.
until you
Oh, yeah.
address it. I
He
talk
wanted you to
about that.
tell the story. He wanted in your own way. Yeah.
Yes. And so I was like, okay, let's go on and dive on into this. So whenever I was around 10 years old, I was sexually abused. And I went through every single emotion you could possibly think of, especially as a little girl. It's a lot to process, when you've been through that. And it was something that wasn't just a one-time deal. I was in this vicious cycle of abuse, and I felt dirty. I felt alone. I felt scared. And I was more or less scared because I didn't want anyone to find out. And I did not want to tell anyone, especially my dad. My dad is a very protective person. And he always said, what would happen if someone hurt his baby girls? And so that was always something that was in the back of my head. And I shut down. And I'm like, I'm going to pretend like nothing ever happened. And I did a very good job at that. For years, I didn't have the red flags they say to look for. I was a straight
Really?
A student. I was not a sad kid at all. I was goofy, silly, still am. That's just how God made me. But I, behind closed doors, would cry myself to sleep at night, just having this feeling of I need to tell somebody, but I don't want to be blamed, or I don't really know what the outcome of that's going to look like. So for me, I just kept quiet and I became very numb to the whole thing. After I got out of that cycle, I got into this depression, but also I was just very good at hiding it. I don't really know how else to say it. I was just really good at hiding it. And so years and years go by, and God placed so many people in my life. It is crazy to even look back and think. There was this one pastor specifically, and I was probably 16 or 17. We were at a Christmas event, and she shared her story on stage, and it was almost similar to my story. And I remember just saying as a kid, I could never be that brave. How is she standing up there so boldly sharing her story, when the thought of it just made me sick to my stomach? And I've learned to never say never, because I have shared my story so much over the past 2 years. But, as those 15 years rolled out, God was really showing me where I needed to be. And if it wasn't for music, I would have never shared my story. If I would have gotten into therapy school, my life would be totally different right now.
I got to stop you there.
Sure.
Did you say 15 years?
I held it quiet for 15 years. Yeah.
And so you're 10, and through those early teenage, pretty much all your teenage years almost, obviously, but I don't understand how you had siblings too. So
Mm-hmm.
nobody picked up on any slight little signs. Like nobody ever heard you crying yourself to sleep at night. Like nobody ever asked you. You just kind of had two lives you were living within yourself, and you knew when to turn them on and off. Right?
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. 15 years. That's unbelievable to kind of comprehend. But go ahead. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. I mean, it was a long time, and I can't say that I was miserable those 15 years, because I became so numb.
Yeah.
It's something that I would forget about, and then it would surface again, like a memory would surface, and it would just all come back to me. It was very strange how just our minds work in general. But I found myself 15 years later praying for direction as a Christian artist on what songs to write that were deeper.
That was
And God
dangerous.
has a sense,
That was
yeah, God
dangerous
has a
prayer,
sense of
right?
humor.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, I did not know the depth of that prayer. I did not. But as I was praying, this story surfaced, and it wouldn't leave me. And I fought God and fought God, because I said, there is no way I'm going to be able to share this story with the world, but also like my friends and my family and my dad. I was terrified to tell my dad. Well, after weeks and weeks of praying, I'm like, okay, if this is not, it was eaten up at me. I was like, if this is not going to leave me, then God, you've got to show me clarity. You've got to show me how to get through this. And you definitely have to give me the strength to be able to do this, because I do not feel that at all. And in that moment, this was not overnight either, but in the moment of just praying over those couple of weeks for clarity, one night I felt God just say, reach out to your abuser. And so I was very hesitant at first, and I prayed about that and prayed about that. And I didn't know how else to move forward than to reach out. And so I contacted my abuser, and I let him know. I said, hey, I just want you to know what happened, that I want to forgive you. And I want to let you know that Jesus loves you and Jesus forgives you. And then, went on to say that I'm going to write a song about this in my healing. And I was able to share Jesus with this person, and to share Jesus with someone who hurt me very deeply. And then in this conversation, to learn that this person didn't know Jesus. That was the healing that I didn't know I needed. But God had that figured out 15 years ago as a little girl, when I was going through one of the hardest things of my life. Like, he knew there was a deeper healing, but I was going to have to grow into that. And after that conversation, it was like a weight off my shoulders. I can't really explain it. It was so relieving to me. It was healing, and it was freedom. for me, taking my voice back, I was silent to my shame and um, bitterness, not really bitterness toward people, but just in my, like by myself, when I had to process things, I would become angry and mad at this person. And that does not help the situation at all. It only hurts it. And so I got that clarity to go up and write this song. And I shared my story for the first time with these songwriters. And I was a mess sharing it because I had never shared it before. And I remember just crying in the studio that I'm sitting in right now, actually, and just crying and trying to figure out how to tell a story that's hopeful and not a story that shares hurt.
So sorry to interrupt, but so you told them about the song before you ever told your dad what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Big exhale, audience. Everybody on the count of 3, take a big deep breath. Yeah, that's heavy. That's heavy. I do have to ask. So when you said it wouldn't leave you, like,
that's still
sounds like
voice.
you told God. Yeah, sounds like you told God no a lot. Like you were like,
I did.
Nah, that's not you. That's bad pizza. That's the devil. That's no. So you did that for a while. So I want to ask for the audience just to maybe talk to somebody that might be doing that. This forgiveness thing and this call you made to this person, like you said, there was freedom to it, but what would you say can get somebody there if they can comprehend that it's not letting that other person off the hook? Because I think that's what we do is we think it's giving somebody permission that it didn't matter, or, hey, there's a hall pass for that one, but it was really for you, right?
Absolutely, 100%. Because I've had people even laugh at me and really kind of mock me in a way, like, how can you forgive someone who hurt you so badly? And it's very clear in the Bible that we have to forgive to be forgiven. And Jesus was literally on the cross being beaten, and he says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. So if Jesus can, then why can't I? We don't realize too, just like you said, John, like, it doesn't let the person off the hook. It doesn't excuse the bad thing that happened to you. But when you forgive, it is actually allowing God to move in your life the way he intended to move. It allows you to walk freely in your calling, because when you have that bitterness and the unforgiveness, it's holding you back from your calling. And that's exactly what the enemy wants. And so when you're able to forgive and let go, you are free. And for me, I took my voice back and I'm able to walk in this freedom that God's given me. And it's a feeling that I've never had before. And it's powerful and it's available for everybody. But healing is a process. And for me, I had to reach out to this person, I felt like, and I did, but it's not like that for everybody.
What was their response? What was their response?
That's a long-winded question.
Okay. You want me to, let me see if I can dial it down. Were they, did they show remorse or apologize or kind of just like own it?
So this is part of my story that I shared on the podcast with 3 of 7 guys, and I've shared with a few others, but I haven't gotten to a point where I share it with people on stage yet, which probably is coming. I feel like coming. But when I reached out to this person, and they were very receiving, they apologized, they were very sorry, and they received it very well. And if you fast forward a month before the release of the record, and I had everything in the pipe to go, it was going to be released on Apple Music, Spotify, all that. There was no turning back at this point. And this person reached back out to me. And it was a call I wasn't expecting. And it was one of those conversations where it brought every ounce of doubt back into my life. Did not want to call it abuse at that point. I don't know what happened from the first conversation to the second, but that's everyone's fear who's been abused, is that the abuser would not admit that it's abuse. And that happens to so many people, but I recognized it. I knew it was happening. I knew the enemy wanted to bring doubt back into my life. He wanted to shut me up, like he had done for 15 years. And I discerned that I was to this point of healing where I'm like, I'm not going back. I'm not
Right.
doing this. Doesn't feel good. And I'm not going back there. And so I was able to shut that out. I did have a couple of days where I just felt this heaviness on me, but then God's like, hey, this is worth it, and people are hurting and people need to hear it. And I feel like so many people who's been through what I've been through can relate to that. And that fear of not being heard. You know what I mean? But I shut that out, and I'm like, I'm going to move forward no matter what fears I face. I'm going to move forward with this thing. And gosh, it was the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life, because I've seen the fruits of it, and I've seen what God's done through it already. And I know there's so many people who haven't even heard the story yet that need to hear it. So
Yeah. And the audience is probably real appreciative that I like threw us off on a detour a little bit, but so you were leading up to the part of writing the song and telling your producer before you made it to your dad. So you went through that process, and you mentioned that it was sort of a all over the place, kind of an emotional roller coaster probably for you.
yeah.
So circle us back or take us back when you finally approached your dad about it, and just kind of I'm a dad. I have a daughter. I have 3 boys and a daughter. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier, like we talk about all the time, like, okay, what's my alibi if somebody ever, I mean,
Yeah,
we take
no,
down these
totally.
hypotheticals of like, if you ever even look at my daughter crossways, like,
Yeah.
so no, take us through. So your dad's obviously a strong man of faith, and
Yeah.
that's another whole conflict within ourselves, but talk about his reaction and kind of how you mustered up the courage.
Yeah. So to kind of go backwards a little bit, um, I'm glad that I didn't tell my dad till I think maybe 3 or 4 months after I wrote the song. And I think too, coming up to write this song, sharing my story, trying to figure out a good way to share my story, how to even tell it. It really prepared me for what was to come. And so I went back home, and as the months rolled out over that next year, I shared it with different family members. I have a huge family. I've got cousins, aunts, uncles, grandmas, grandpas. I
Yeah.
have such a big family. And so I couldn't just sit everyone down together. Like I had to go separately and tell these family members of mine and even friends. And throughout that process, I was able to really learn how to word things in a very hopeful way to prepare me for my conversation with my dad. And before I go into that, I had came across family members who have been through abuse as well. And it was through my story that I was able to share with family members that I didn't even know needed to hear it. So that
Wow.
was even further of confirmation that I'm doing what God wants me to do, even if I'm uncomfortable.
Wow.
So I remember, I remember this day like it was yesterday. I had everything planned out of what I was going to tell my dad, how I was going to say it. It was the night before our conversation, and I had my notes in my phone up, and I just started typing everything out. It was a huge paragraph, and I'm not an anxious person at all, but I started feeling this anxiety in me, and I felt God say, delete the note. And so this huge paragraph that I had worked so hard for on how I was going to perfectly tell my dad and make sure everything was okay, I had to delete it. And I had to trust God that he was going to carry me through that conversation the next day. And the next day was on a Sunday. And I remember I couldn't even focus in church. I was just like, I was
No.
not myself.
Yeah. More nervous than you've ever been for a
And
show, I bet.
that afternoon, yes, oh my gosh, I can't even compare. Well, my dad was working in his shop, and I had told my mom at this point already. And I said, I think I'm going to go talk to dad. And I walked out to the shop, and I was like shaking the whole time walking there. And, I had that, hey, dad, can we talk kind of tone. And like, he looked at me like something's up. And so I sat him down, and we had the conversation in his shop. And it was hard. It was hard for him to swallow that. And he was upset. He wanted to know who it was and all of that. And I just told him, I said, at this point, 15 years later, I'm fully healed. And I said, it's not going to help anything to blast this person's name because ultimately it would hurt my story, and he understood that in that moment. And he was, obviously he was crying and very upset that I had been through something like that. And all he could do is just really give me a big hug and just say, I'm here for you and all of that. And I was very clear to tell my dad that I wouldn't be here without God. I don't know where I would be. I was in a very deep depression, and I was behind closed doors and no one ever knew. And so having that grounded faith that my parents really sown into my life through church. I mean, I was always involved with church and church camp and Wednesday nights, and they always made sure that I was involved. And because of them is why I'm here, because it led me to Jesus at a very early age. And I think that really gave him this peace that surpasses all understanding, because in that moment, he probably just wanted to go rage.
Yeah.
And so,
well, can I ask you a question right there? I want to maybe just jump in. So I'm assuming that you and your dad had a close relationship your whole life growing up. Like
dad, he always, I was a country kid. I was the outdoors tomboy. I was always out there hunting and fishing with him. So we did have a close relationship. And I think as I got older, I kind of drifted away, and then this brought us back together.
Yeah. So will you do me a favor? This is selfish of me, but for the dads and for me, like, was he like, did he feel this, I don't know, overwhelming burden that he should have noticed something long before you told him? Like, there's a dad part of me, a lot part of me as the dad is going to look back and blame myself that I couldn't help you through that process, especially when you say I'm healed and I'm free. And man, where was I during that process? That's my first go-to. Talk to the dads now that there's nothing your dad could have done, right? I mean, probably that would have, because you had no red flags. So how did you maybe comfort some of those burdens that he had, if he had them?
Yeah, I mean, my mom and dad both really, but my dad and mom always told us as kids what was right and what was wrong. And so I think that's why I lived in so much shame, is because I was stuck in this abuse that I was stuck in it, literally. There were moments where I was trying to get out and couldn't. And at that point, it's not my fault and it's not my parents' fault. And I made sure to tell my dad that it was not his fault, that he did all that he could do. And it was just a situation that was beyond our control. And I think that lifted it some from him. But I think what helped him the most was to hear that I forgave this person and I wasn't living in hurt anymore. Because if I was coming from this place of hurt and pain, then it would be even heavier on him. So I came from this place that I was healed. And several hours later, you could tell he'd been pondering on it all day. And he just said, Brooke, if you can forgive this person, then I can too. And like, to have my dad say that was like, gosh, okay, God, what are you doing? What
That's
are you
only
doing?
God. That's only God, because I cannot hear myself saying those words in that situation. And
I
probably
mean,
couldn't either.
He probably couldn't either, but he saw something that was different about this. And it was through my forgiveness he was able to forgive. And we don't realize like how many people are struggling with unforgiveness. And if we're talking about unforgiveness to a friend and they're dealing with it, then what's that helping anything? We're meant to lead by example, and it's gonna
was that your breakthrough? Like, if we have to put a label and maybe wave a banner over this whole situation called breakthrough, would you say your breakthrough was the moment that you called that person and got free for yourself, but forgave them? And then, like, did that springboard you into just this whole future that has happened afterwards? Would you consider that like your breakthrough moment?
Absolutely. I think so too, because I had been struggling with my purpose and like, what does this look like? And it was through that where God's like, you've got a story to tell, and I want you to tell it with the world. And it was after fully forgiving this person, having that conversation, I was like, I can do anything now. Like, I just felt like I was walking in the true identity that God had on my life instead of living in this shame that I've been walking in for so long. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not just music for me, it's ministry. It's being able to share my story in a way that shares hope. And then once I was able to share that with my family, I was like, okay, no one can stop me now.
Yeah.
Like that's how it felt. And it was just so relieving to be able to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I didn't want to assume and put words in your mouth, but I would have, if I had to, gun to my head, that would have what I would have said was your breakthrough moment was getting that baggage off of you,
Yeah.
like that dark cloud that just kind of followed you around. I think that was the moment, and so now we're in this process. Of course, you say you're healed, but obviously there's probably triggers throughout, your life that maybe take you back to something, and you know how to get out of those quickly, of course.
Mhm.
But man, talk about this song. I mean, thanks a lot for me having to watch that video with a box of Kleenex. Thanks a lot. That's all I have to say. And I sent that to my family on text, and they're watching it. And I mean, it's just so, and I'm a little late to the party. Of course, I know that you recorded this when it's been a little bit, right?
Oh goodness. 2 years ago. I think we
Yeah, two
recorded
years
two.
ago. So
Yeah.
forgive me, I'm a little late to the party, but I
You're good.
mean, dude, that song, I mean, was that was
It
that
was emotional.
freeing? Yeah, was that freeing
Yes.
though when you saw it come out and you saw the response? Like, tell us about that moment and just the people that it's impacted.
It's crazy to me too, because I mean, I still get messages from people, and when I released it, my inbox was flooded. It was overwhelming with the response and the stories that people were sharing. People that I have known for years and years would share their story of how they've been abused and how they were struggling still, and how my song has helped them, or maybe stories that were similar to mine and they had forgiven their abuser, or some that were still in the abuse. And so it was just crazy to see how God used this song that had been put in my heart to write a year and a half before it was released. And it was just so worth it, because when I was struggling with trying to tell it, I felt God say, like, people need to hear it. People are hurting, and I didn't realize how many
Was it
people.
was it always called when this thing took shape and was born inside you, was it always called Taking My Voice Back? Or did
It
you have it
wasn't.
some
It
okay.
wasn't. I didn't even have a title. I just had my story, my messy story. And when we sat down, it was my producer and then another songwriter. It just honestly flowed together perfectly. How we wrote that, honestly, it's all blur. It's a blur to me. Like, it was God was in the room when we wrote that, and I have no doubt about it. Because not all songwrites go that smoothly, but that one did. And
Yeah. Yeah.
gosh, it
That's
was so
so
cool.
good, man. That's so good. And there's another song I wanted to ask you about too, because your journey wasn't just the abuse that you were under. Like your mom, you just getting you here
Yeah.
was a challenge, right? Like she went
Yeah.
through some health situations, like when she was pregnant with you.
Yeah.
So tell us because this song "Purpose for the Pain" is that where that
Yeah.
originated from that journey. So take us through
Yeah.
that just a little bit, because that was an interesting story.
Yeah. So when I first got started with music, we were at the beach. I remember this like it was yesterday. My mom shared this with me, this story, and I had always known something was different, in that she had struggled with something when she was pregnant with me, but I didn't know the full story. And for some reason that day, she just opened up. But when she was pregnant with me, she was very, very sick, and she went through several months of her pregnancy in this sickness, and doctors didn't have a clue what was going on. It was just getting worse, and they couldn't treat her because it was limited testing because she was pregnant. So all they could do is just get her by. And she got to this like 8 month mark. She was miserable. I mean, bedridden. She was depressed. So not only physically struggling, she was like mentally struggling, because it had been just day by day trying to just get by. And the doctors were just saying, we think you have a brain tumor. Like, we're not sure what's going on, but we think it's a tumor, but
Hmm.
it could be something worse. There's a chance that you both may not make this. So we've got to have her early. And so my mom obviously did what was best had me early. I was preemie 1 month early, and
Mm.
I was healthy baby. But by then the damage had been done. My mom had shingles of the brain, which is very, very rare. And
Didn't even know that was a thing.
yeah,
Wow.
it's crazy. And it paralyzed 2 of her cranial nerves. So she's permanently damaged as far as hearing in one side. And then she's got paralysis on one side of her face. People think it's Bell's palsy, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like Bell's palsy.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I remember going through chiropractor appointments with her as a kid. So it just shows you how long of a recovery she had after, just to get some kind of, feeling back. But through that, several people prayed for her. I had my great grandmother on my dad's side, who she was a warrior for Jesus. And just what a cool person to have on your side. And she would pray over me and my mom before my mom had me, and just praying life over us. And she prayed this specific prayer. My mom was telling me she prayed that I would be a Joshua for Jesus. And Joshua was a leader. And I didn't know what that meant until now. Obviously, I'm like walking in this prophetic word that was spoken
Wow.
over my life when I was just in the womb. And that just shows that God has a specific plan for each person before they were even created. So how cool is that?
So,
But
I mean,
yeah,
hats off. I mean, I salute grandmas anyway. Grandmothers, great grandmothers. Like the
yeah.
world would be in shambles without grandmothers. But I have a question. So you had no lasting like
No.
physical things, shortcomings, any
Mm-mm.
sort of handicaps
I
of
wasn't
any
even
kind?
in the NICU. No, I mean I was pretty much in well baby. Like I was good. But my mom,
Wow.
she
Yeah.
had some things. So
Right, right.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. So that song, so Purpose for the Pain, man, so that came after
Yeah.
the other song, Taking My Voice Back. So that one just kind of been gestating within you for
Yes.
years?
Yeah, I knew as soon as my mom told me that story, I wanted to write a song about it. Like, that was a song I actually wanted to write before Taking My Voice Back was even a thing.
Mm.
Um, and it's a story of hope as well. Like, we go through things that are really hard sometimes, and thankfully my mom was healed here. But some people don't get their healing on this side of heaven. Some people get their healing in heaven, and ultimately that's the best healing you could ever get. But it's through those circumstances where God does not change, and God's still who he says he is, no matter where you get your healing. And that's one clear message that I wanted to share with that song, because it's not that God causes these bad things to hurt so we could learn a lesson, but it's that we live in this fallen world, and that bad things are going to happen, but it's how we respond and how we let God walk us through that matters the most, and that God does not change in any situation we go through. And so that was one thing for my mom. Like, you question, why do I have to go through this? I should be happy. I'm having a baby, but she was struggling, and she was asking God, heal me. And he wasn't healing her exactly the way she wanted. And to fast forward, I mean, last year we walked through something very similar with my mom. She had a heart attack, and for 6 months she had the same symptoms that she had with the shingles. And so we
Wow.
thought, like, is it back? Is the shingles of the brain back? How crazy would that be? But it was just her body thrown off from the heart attack we had learned. And that season, 6 months of me fighting with my mom, I mean, we had everyone praying. We had war going on in the house. I mean, it was a spiritual warfare happening in our home.
Wow.
I had sticky notes on the walls throughout the entire house to just pray and read, and have her pray and read over, and just having to be there for my mom. And like, in this season where the first time she'd been through it, she carried me, but I had to carry her this time.
Yeah.
And it was such a full circle moment for me. And that same year that I released the song was the same year my mom was going to have to realize that there's purpose in this pain that she's going through. We just have to get where God wants us to go. And I remember just praying every morning for 6 months straight, God, please heal my mom. Please heal my mom. And it got to a point where he wasn't healing her the way I wanted him to. And so I said, okay, if you're not going to heal her the way I want you to, then you're going to have to help me walk this out with her. And we finally, right before Christmas, we were going to a natural doctor, and they really helped her get her body back going. And then just praying, and it got us through it. It taught me a lot. It taught my mom a lot, and it definitely brought us even closer than we were before. She's like a best friend to me, but it was something that was challenging, really challenging. And wow.
I mean, gosh, I almost think, there's got to be more than just one song in that whole story. I mean, that could be its own record. So I do want to ask, like, who has been kind of the staple hero for you through the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, 5 to 10 years? Like, everybody's got one, whether we admit it or not. Like, everybody's got that kind of staple, that hero. Hey, who's been your hero along this journey, like through the music, through coming to terms again and digging up these old emotional wounds, writing and watching your mom's journey? Like, anybody stand out? And there's probably not just one. I don't want to make anybody mad, but is anybody stand out to you on that question?
That's a hard one for me, because God's given me so many people for different reasons. And I would say for the past 10 years, my mom has been that for me. Like, she's just been my cheerleader. No matter what I do, she's there. She's cheering me on. She's praying for me. She's just so supportive, and like, she's that person for me. But I've got so many people. It's kind of hard to pick one. Her sister, I call her my spiritual mama, because over the past couple of years, we've gotten really close. Like, I've gotten very close with my aunt, and she's someone who speaks a lot of wisdom over my life. And then my producer, who's my manager, who's my booking agent, the one who reached out on Facebook at the very beginning of this music thing, he has invested so much time into me that I don't deserve. Wow. And he has really pushed me and challenged me as an artist, but as a person as well. And when I filmed when I recorded that first EP, first songs I'd ever written, I went back home. I had no plan. And he knew that. He knew I was sending you home and you weren't going to do anything with it because you had no resource, he said. And that right there is whenever everything just kind of took off, because we partnered together, and he coaches me through it. And till this day, he's like a big bro now.
Well, that was a trick question for the listeners. Like, I knew there wasn't going to be one.
So hard.
I wanted to see if you passed the test, and you did. You said many people. No, there's got to be a ton in that type of story, and anybody's story, really. There's never just that one. There's got to be a group, right? It takes a village to kind of help each other out. So let's talk about what you're doing and kind of what you're advocating for going forward. And you talked to me a little bit off the camera a couple of weeks ago, maybe, about this. So who are you working with in regards to some of the trafficking initiatives you're behind?
Yeah, so I've kind of just partnered with several different people, and I had an event that I was a part of in Florida, and they were raising money for a certain trafficking organization, awareness organization over there. So it's kind of like all spread out. Can't really say it's one specific one. This one that we were going up to be a part of tomorrow that just got rescheduled, that one was for a specific, organization over there. And so it's kind of all spread out. And I had this opportunity from actually 307 podcast, someone who was listening, who is having me out in Arizona next year for a trafficking awareness event. And so it's like God's being very clear on where he needs me to be. And it's for these people who've been abused. And even though I've never been trafficked, I've been abused, and abuse is abuse. But I want to let people know that's not the end, and that's not what defines them, that there's a whole life on the other side, and there's hope there. And so I want to share that. That's my heart, is for people who've been abused. And God's very clear on that over the past couple of years. And so whatever that looks like, as far as putting on events, being part of events,
Yeah.
matter what that is. Like, I'm going to advocate for that because it's something that people don't really want to talk about.
Yeah.
And we need to talk about it. It's a
Of
real
course.
problem. It's a very big problem here, especially in the USA, but it's all over the world.
Right.
And it's slavery is what that is, and people
Right.
don't want to call it that, but it is.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
it's happening every day.
Yeah.
Children, boys and girls, and men and women. And it looks
Really.
different. Sometimes it looks like what we see in movies, and sometimes it doesn't,
Yeah. Yeah.
it looks so different. So
Yeah.
just
So
bringing awareness.
that's awesome. I mean, there can't be a more worthy cause for sure, because I mean, it's so prevalent, and it's going to take so many people getting on board with that. But I mean, I love how you're it just goes back to using our gifts. Like, everybody has a function within the body of Christ, and everybody's using it different. And I mean, you're using your voice and your talent and your platform, which is awesome, spreading awareness for that. So I want to ask you to look into your crystal ball and try to read God's mind a little bit here, but to close out this awesome experience, when do you feel, because you said you haven't gotten to the point, I don't know if you call it like the courage tipping point or what,
Mhm.
but sharing it from the stage you mentioned earlier, and it's all going to be God's timing, so you don't get to use that as an answer. No, I mean, what do you think would have to happen? Like, do you are just kind of expecting to wait and feel that Holy Spirit moment when you're up there? Or is it something you feel like needs to be kind of coordinated, like in your own mind, and kind of scripted a little bit on how that transpires? Or do you have any idea?
I think I already know that I need to, um, because I'm sharing it on podcasts, and I want to say the first time I shared it was on Chad's
Yeah.
podcast, and I feel like that's God's way. I don't know why I felt like I needed to share that. I just did. So that to me is the Holy Spirit saying you're ready. And when I tell my story on stage, it doesn't always sound cookie cutter every time. Sometimes it
Sure.
changes. And
Yeah.
so I do feel it out. I do feel the Holy Spirit wants me to go even deeper, that I'll go there. And if not, then I won't.
Yeah.
And I just kind of let God guide me when I'm on stage sharing my story. And so I know it's going to happen when God wants it to happen. And he just needs me to be obedient and to be aware of that, so.
Yeah, and he'll show it to you. I mean, obviously, like there's somebody out there. It'll be the right timing. It's never our timing, and that's what I
Right.
love. I love. I was going to say earlier when you were talking about sometimes the pain that we go through. Like, there's obviously a purpose. I mean, you wrote a song about it, but like, I think it's what I like a lot, and one of the things I like most about God is that he does like to show off, and there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with that. Like, I like the fact that when we're down and we're the most unsuspecting person to come out of something, and we're the most ordinary, like, that's when he kind of steps in, is like, no, 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 let me prop you up through this
Yeah.
circumstance, right? And I'm going to prop you up, and then you're going to point back to me and say that's why. And so I think that's part of the pain we go through, is for that reason. Like, I think so it gets people's attention when we come out of it and we look back and point and go, wasn't me, it was
That
God.
was God.
So that's
Yeah, that's so
awesome.
cool too, because God is so tangible, and he's just he does things. He's so intentional in our lives, and it happens all the time. But are we aware of it? Are we looking for it? Or are we just so sidetracked with our own path, our own thoughts, and all
Yeah.
that? And I've been there,
Yeah.
but I've also seen God in such a changeable way in my life, and so it's
Yeah.
pretty cool. He's got a sense of humor sometimes
He
too.
does. He totally does. He does. Well, okay. So before I let you go, I have to let the audience find a way to get a hold of you, or follow you. So give us kind of your handle on the social medias, give us your
Yeah.
website, and kind of where they can go track down some of your materials.
Sure. Yeah. So I have a website, brookerobertsonmusic.com, and I've got a store up there. I've got pretty much all my social medias on there, and also my booking agency as well. And then Instagram, Facebook, YouTube is all Brooke Robertson Music. So I try to keep it pretty simple for everybody.
That's
But
awesome.
I'm on there pretty often, and I'd love to talk to you.
That's awesome. No, that's cool. And so down to earth. Careers taking off. Don't forget us little people whenever you're standing on some stage, huge stage somewhere. But no, audience, hey, as I close this out, I want to thank Brooke on behalf of the audience. I want to thank everything you're doing, your voice, your courage, like a picture of redemption and forgiveness like no other. And
Mm,
just that's what caught my attention was the forgiveness that I heard you come out of you when you were talking to Chad and Blake and Chili. And I had to reach out to you, and I'm glad I did because just this
I'm
is
glad you did.
incredible. It's awesome, and keep doing what you're doing. I can't wait to see where your future is because, like I said, audience, Dark Before Dawn, this series, we know there's a dawn, and we know that we can get through darkness, and our faith in Christ gets us there. So, on behalf of the audience, she's been Brooke Robertson. We've been Last in Line. Be blessed.